All right, I guess I'll go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. Normally it's Pete doing the hosting, but today it's me. My name is Jessica Pierce. I'm the film series general clerk assistant, second in command, whatever, but I help with a lot of different aspects of the film series. And tonight that means hosting. Not because Pete couldn't, he's here, but I just really wanted to be part of the Satoshi Kon series a little bit more because I'm such a fan. So with that in mind, I'm gonna just do a quick rundown of the series and then we'll get into Elsa's presentation. So if you're new here, we are the Webster University Film Series, St. Louis's only year-round nonprofit cinema. Normally, we exist in the Winifred Moore Auditorium on Webster University's campus, but obviously since the pandemic, we're not operating there. But we have had a very consistent virtual theater with a lot of different films consistently coming out through that. We will eventually reopen our doors sometime this fall. We haven't gotten the official go-ahead, but by the time we're back on campus, theoretically we'll be back in the theater. So we're excited for that. But in the meantime, we are doing the speaker series, which we've really enjoyed doing so far. And what it is, to sum it up, is every Thursday night at 7 p.m. we have a different guest speaker talking about whoever the director is for the month. And each week within that month, a different speaker talks about a different film by that director. So this month we're talking about Satoshi Kon. And tonight we have Elsa Chanez talking about Millennium Actress. And I do want to say thank you to Japan America Society of St. Louis for being our sponsors for this month of events and for supporting us. We really appreciate that. Next week we have Ethan Hawker, an animator, film critic, and Webster alum who we're proud to have come speak. He'll be here to discuss Tokyo Godfathers. And then next month we have a series we haven't officially announced yet, so I'm probably not supposed to say anything, but do keep an eye on our social media and our newsletter for updates on that. And in case you're not certain, our Facebook handle is Webster Film Series, and then our Twitter and Instagram are WU Film Series. If you're not on our mailing list but you want to be, feel free to message either me or Pete tonight, or get a hold of us some way that you know how, and we'll add you to the list. Our newsletters come out once a week, if that. So you'll get updates on everything we're involved in, everything we're sponsoring, just to sort of get an idea of what we're doing at a glance. So other than that, tonight is the last night to rent Berlin Alexanderplatz in our virtual theater, which I want to mention both of the films we have in our virtual theater. So tonight is the last night for Berlin Alexanderplatz. Director Burhan Kurbani recently adapted Alfred Doblin's 1929 novel by the same name. The story, though, is most known through its 1980 adaptation into a mini-series by Rainer Werner Fassbinder. Tonight is the last night to rent, but if you do rent it tonight, it's in your possession for 5 days until you hit the play button. But so if you do want it, it's not a lost cause to rent it tonight. And then there's one more week for The County, which is a narrative film about a struggling Icelandic farmer facing corruption at the hand of the local co-op in her area. So once you rent that, you have a week to watch it. I think I talked about everything. That was very quick. But before I go, after Elsa's presentation, we'll have a Q&A. So please stick around for that. And if you do have questions, please drop them in the Q&A box. And you can do that at any point. You can do that now. You can do that in 10 minutes, either way. And then if you have a question that you'd rather verbalize, you can raise your hand with the little emoji at the bottom of the window. And then by the time we're in the Q&A portion, I'll unmute you and you can ask your question live. So however you want to do it, but we're looking forward to a really engaged discussion. So please send whatever questions or even just comments that you have. But besides that, I want to say welcome Elsa Chanez, Washington University PhD student in Japanese language and literature. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so very much, Jessica. Before I start, I also wanted to say thank you to the Webster University Film Series for organizing these wonderful events and for bringing people together and for showing all these great movies. I'm really excited to talk about Millennium Actress tonight because it's a movie that I really like a lot. But it's also a movie that's quite complicated. And so I had to pick and choose which element of the film I really wanted to talk. And because I didn't want to talk for so much time, because, you know, it's not very interesting if we don't have a good conversation at the end. So I really want to encourage you, if there's anything that you want to talk about the film, let us know and let's have a lively conversation. So without any further ado, I will now share my screen. And I hope this is visible for everyone. So I gave this talk a very, I would say, rather pompous name. When did this become a movie? Which is a quote from the film itself. Memories, films, and visual storytelling in Satoshi, Millennium Actress. And this notion of memory is really a topic that I wanted to discuss tonight with all of you. So, but before I attack that topic, I just wanted to mention a little bit more about the production and what happened, because in our previous discussion last week when we talked about Perfect Blue, we just left it, you know, it's over, the movie's out, people are getting really excited about Kahn's work, so what's next for him? And in 1998, as Perfect Blue was being released, a producer came to him, Makitaro, and he told him, I want to make a film with you. And so Kahn asked him, what sort of film do you want? And Maki says, well, there's one word that came into my mind, and that is damashie, or a trompe-l'oeil, or a picture that tricks your eye, something, you know, that is not exactly what it is. So from that first word, that first notion, they started to write this film. And Kahn, once again, is pairing up with Murai Sadaki, who was the co-writer also in Perfect Blue. And they started, you know, exchanging idea and really building on this idea of time, you know, going back on time, going through different time period. And how do you do that? Well, they finally zero in on this idea of the actress, because she's able to jump from one time period to another time period. But the fact that she's an actress is actually not that important for them. It's just really this idea that she can jump from one place in time to another. That was really important to them. So we kind of have the same dream team that we have in Perfect Blue here, but there is one man that joins the team that I wanted to mention too, and it's Ira Susumu, who is the person who is responsible for the music. And I'd like to introduce him here because it's not its last collaboration with Kahn, because he also worked on Paranoia Agent, the series, but he also made the music for Paprika, and he was also working on the music for Kahn's last film, The Dream Machine, that was not released, but he also made the music. And Iraza was an interesting kind of guy. He makes music that is really all over the place, all over the spectrum. He makes rocks, he makes really synth EV music. If you have the chance to look at him on YouTube, he has this experimental concert where there's lights and electricity in the background, and he's just moving things and making the music change. It's very experimental, very interesting. And one aspect of the music of Millennium Actress that he pointed out is that it's very cyclical. It has all of these themes that keep going, and that really connects well with what you're seeing on screen with Chiyoko running. So definitely the music, I think, really helps the film to convey its message. And it's a very interesting collaboration between the two. Kahn was a big fan of Hirasawa. He requested personally to have him on the movie. And so this collaboration is really something that made the film great, in my opinion. Now the film itself, in order to work on it, Kahn and his team did a lot of research. They read lots of books, as you can see in the picture here. They even went around and wore samurai armor to see how they work, to really taking all the little details that they could find. They also filmed, and that's the picture in the bottom here, one person that they knew, they asked her to run, and they kept filming her running, and they filmed her from the side, they filmed her running after a car, and they use all of this footage to create all of the scene where Chiyoko is running. I think they mentioned that this particular scene is the one where she's running after the train. And so they really based that in reality, did a lot of research. And the third picture that I have here is a page from the storyboard. And I'd like to remind you that Kon was also a manga artist, and it took a lot of trouble to really make this very, very clear storyboard. And when it was done with it, they filmed the whole thing. So just the image moving, so they could work on the music, they could work on the voice actor, see where the transition would be. So there were all of this work going on into the film until it was finally released in 2001. But it was not released in Japan first. Actually, it was released at the Montreal Animation Festival, where it did very well. People really liked it. It won lots of prizes. And it kept going around in different anime festivals around the world, where again, it did very well. Before it came back to Japan in a certain way, it came out in 2002. And there again, it did fairly well and got some prizes. So now that we just looked a little bit about the production, let's look at the opening of the film. Because I think the opening is very interesting to define this idea of the porous boundaries, as shown in the film, between reality and the world of the movie. So if you recall, the film starts with us being in space. We're in the middle of the star and the camera pans, and we see the Earth, and we see that we are on a planet, probably a moon. And so you're thinking, well, this is a sci-fi movie, this is where I am. But then the images keep cutting back to Genya watching the film himself. And so soon, little by little, you realize that actually in the world of the film, Genya is watching a film himself. So there's already, this notion of worlds going into world, which I will discuss a little bit more. And this becomes more interesting again when there's the scene, which I'm going to play here, where Chiyoko is in the rocket ship that is starting to depart. So because of that, in the diegesis of the film, everything is shaking, right? And this kind of bleeds into reality because there's a real earthquake that starts happening around Genya, and it's almost as if the film is kind of becoming, coming into its own reality. So with the very, very first scene of the film, we're already grappling with this notion of the boundaries between this world, and we are realizing very quickly that you can go from one to the other extremely easily. So as you remember the plot of the film, we have this man, Genya, who is a big fan of this actress, Fujiwara Chiyoko, who for some reason one day stopped making film and decided to become a bit of a recluse. She's not accepting anyone who wants to come and interview her. But he managed to secure this passage into her space with the keys. And she started talking about her life and her memories. And at first you think, well, this is a normal flashback. We are looking at her sitting on the sofa, talking about her memory. And then we are in her memories. And she's again sitting on a sofa, and somebody's trying to recruit her for her to become an actress. But as the camera turns, we're realizing that Genya and his cameraman, who is still filming, they also came through this memory, right? They hear, and nobody is realizing they hear at first, and they're just witnessing what's happening in sometimes a little bit of a creepy way. I think the cameraman comments on it when they're both looking at this schoolgirl running around the street, and they're like, well, It's not a bit creepy, but they're not really doing anything that interrupts the memory. They're just merely spectator. And I would argue that we are also brought into the memory. And I really like the character of the cameraman, Ida, because he's always confused about what's happening. He's always asking, well, what's going on? Are we in a movie? Why are we here all of a sudden? And that's a bit what we are doing, right? Because Chiyoko is not a real person in our world, so we don't know about her. But Genya is a very big fan of her, so it keeps like telling the cameraman, you know, oh, this is what's happening, this is who she is, etc. And through him, we are also giving this information to understand. So in a way, the cameraman is a little bit of an audience surrogate for us, and through him, we're learning more about the situation. And this continues for a fairly long amount of time. Chiyoko meets the painter, who is really at the center of the story. And as she's running after him in the train station, Genya makes this comment. He said, oh, I cried at this scene 50th time when I saw it in the cinema. So now something else is happening. We are not really in a memory because it has become a film. So is it that the memory is being invaded by the world of the film? Is it mediated by the film, this memory? Or what's happening? We're not really sure. And the cameraman reacts by saying, well, when did that turn into a movie? What happened? And I really like this scene too, because Genya and Chiyoko, they're both crying together in a sort of a parallel way, which sort of foreshadow that later on, Genya is also going to start influencing the memory. He's going to start and jump into it and start saving her life, basically. So, because I'm a very, very visual person, I thought I would try and make a diagram to sort of understand how all of this world, if you will, fit together. So here's a film diegetic space. It's the place where Genya is a big fan of this actress, Fujiwara Chiyoko, and she's also well known, being in a lot of movies. Here's a film space. From this space, there's also the space of Chiyoko's movie, which is kind of nested into the film diegetic space. It's created from the film diegetic space into this new kind of world, if you will. And from there, we also get into Chiyoko's memories itself, which is this weird place that is mediated by the movie, but also is invaded by Genya and the cameraman in a certain way, because little by little, they start influencing the course of a memory. So we don't have this objective vision of her life anymore. We are witnessing how the two men are invading the memory and making it change in a certain way. But also movies start influencing the way she looks at her own memories. So we have these two forces, if you will, that are affecting the memories. But then let's complicate it a little bit more by adding our world, a world where Satoshi Kon and his team are making a movie, a world where other movies exist. And these also influence Chiyoko's memory. So how? Well, I'm sure a lot of you picked up on that, but there's the scene where they are all in a train in Manchuria, and seamlessly we cut and we arrive on the balcony of a medieval castle, right? And the scene is very reminiscent of a Kurosawa Akira film, Throne of Blood, which itself is an adaptation of Macbeth by Shakespeare. And in the film, the character played by Toshiro Mifune is being attacked by arrows. You can see on the top left here. And that scene is almost, is recreated almost in the same as it was in the film. So except this time, of course, it's the cameraman who is being attacked. And later on in the same medieval setting, if you will, we see this character, the woman with the wheel, and we are not really sure what she is at first, but she keeps spinning her wheel and she keeps telling Chiyoko that she really likes her, but she also hates her so much. And this character is based on that witch character in Throne of Blood, who itself is an adaptation of the three witches from Macbeth. And she doesn't appear for very long in Throne of Blood, actually, but she's much more central in Millennium Actress. So here we have a very concrete example of how the world that we are in is influencing the movie. But that keeps going further down, and it was mentioned last week already. I think people were already very excited to talk about that, but Chiyoko herself is based on Hara Setsuko and Takamine Hideko, who are two Japanese actresses who were active around the same time period as, you know, the actress of the movie. Hara Setsuko is interesting because she's often connected to the work of director Ozu Yasujiro. And she worked on 6 films with him, including 3 where she played 3 different women who are all named Noriko. So some people call it the Noriko trilogy. And what's interesting about her too is in 1963, after Ozu died, she decided to retire, and similarly to Chiyoko, she goes and sort of become a reclusive person who doesn't want to talk anymore, doesn't want to answer interview. And so she gained this sort of aura this time as well of being, you know, this very, very beautiful, talented woman that stayed the same. You don't see her anymore, so the only image you have of her is from the movie. And that is definitely mirror into Chiyoko. But she didn't only play it in Ozu's film, actually. She made a lot of them before she worked with him. But there's definitely a comparison you can see between her and Chiyoko. Takamine is interesting too because she was just like Chiyoko. She was a child actress, even younger than Chiyoko. And she made also a ton of movies, but she's also associated with Naruse Mikio's film, which I find interesting because both of the actresses were in Ozu, Naruse, and also Kurosawa's film, but they sort of became the muses of this specific director. And on this slide, I also included images from a film on your left and on your right, which don't mimic a specific example, like the Kurosawa film would definitely have a strong connection with Throne of Blood. But here we have sort of the Ozu style filming. So for example, on the left, Ozu is known for having a static camera and for placing it low on the ground, as if you were sitting on a tatami mat, so people call it tatami shot, and you are looking straight at what's happening. So that's sort of mimicked there. And on the right, when Chiyoko got married and she is in the house, right? And the domestic aspect is also something that we can see in the Ozu film. So I also want to talk a little bit about Chiyoko as a female character. That's something that is quite important to me. And so there's this interview that Khan did with Thomas, I think is his name, in 2002, where he was asked about the fact that Perfect Blue had a female character, main female character, and Millennium Actress, main character is also a woman. So the question was, what's up with that? Do you like writing female character? And Khan's answer is a bit peculiar, to say the least. He says, and I quote, "With a male character, I can only see the bad aspects. Because I am a man, I know very well what a male character is thinking. That makes it very difficult to create a male character. On the other hand, if you write a female protagonist because it's the opposite sex and I don't know them the way I know male, I can project my obsession onto the characters and expand the aspect I want to describe." So I have a little bit of issue with this comment, especially this idea that the female character becomes in some sort of vessel for Khan to be able to fuel his obsession. What does it tell us about Chiyoko as a character? And the more I think about Chiyoko as a character, the more I realize that I don't know very much about her. We see a very big span of her life, if you omit the time where we don't really know what she's doing. But we don't really know her as a person. The only motivation that she shows into a memory is this idea that she has to keep running. She has to run after this man. And so some people have been undercutting this sort of sexist reading of Chiyoko, looking her as a sexist representation, basically, by saying that at the very end of the film, when she's in the rocket, she says, well, it's not the man that was running after her, it's the chase that I liked, or it's the me that was doing the chase that I was in love with. But does that really undercut this reading of the character? Because in a certain way, if Shioko was shown as really enjoying the chase, she's gaining stuff from it, she's going around the world, she's learning new things, she's getting opportunities through her chase. That's not really the case. She doesn't seem very happy when she's running around. And so that's why I have a little bit of issue with this reading of the final scene. But feel free to disagree, we can discuss that. But that connects, this representation of female character connects well with our discussion that continues from last week between the idol otaku relationship. And in the same interview with Meth, Khan was asked about the relationship between the two movies. And I think somebody mentioned that last week too. Are they a companion movie? Do they work well together? And Khan mentioned that Perfect Blue and Millennium Actress can be seen as sister movie. And by that, it means that they focus on similar themes and topic. And one of them is the idol otaku relationship, which we can see in the pairing of Chiyoko and Genya. Chiyoko, throughout her life, and as we see her constructed in her memory, she always remains pure. She's always inaccessible, on screen and off screen. And Otobasi, in her article, argues that she's the ideal object of admiration. She is to be gazed at by a heterosexual eye. We are encouraged as the audience to look at her, to enjoy her presence on screen. And Genya, who is an otaku, he knows all about her film, he has seen all of them, he knows the dialogue by heart, cries 6 feet at a time at the same scene. He has a keychain with a picture of her as a very young woman. He's very dedicated to Chiyoko. He is always there for her. He saves her life a million times in reality and also in the past, but he also knows her more than a simple otaku would, if you will, because he also worked on the same set, the same movie set as her, which, you would think that makes him look at her more as a full-fledged person, but it doesn't seem to see her that way. She's always this perfect image, this perfect woman that he keeps coming back to. And Ortobasi argues that in him doing the film, doing the documentary, is fulfilling in a way the ultimate otaku fantasy, because the object of your obsession is now part of your creation. You are making something with her. You are directing her, you are making her do things, you are saving her life. And another aspect of this pairing that I find interesting is that Genya keeps trying to confess to her, keeps trying to tell her how much he loves her, and she keeps running away. It's kind of a joke, a running gag that goes into the film, that she's always on the run and he doesn't have time to really confess to her. But there's also this notion that Chiyoko herself is some sort of an otaku. And she's, similarly to Genya, she's dedicated to the painter. She doesn't know his name. She simply doesn't remember his face. She had maybe 1 or 2 conversations with him, but she's really, really wanting to meet with him. They have this promise that they will meet again. She's running, she wants to meet him. And the painter is an artist, is somebody who is trying to make art. So in a way, you can also see him in this same space. You know, she's an actress, he's a painter, and she's a big fan of him, and she's kind of having this otaku relationship with him. So in a way, Genya and Chiyoko are sort of a foil of each other, even though Genya is, you know, trying to fulfill his fantasy with her, and she's unable to ever meet the painter again. Another aspect of the work that I wanted to talk about is this notion of representation of history. And Ortobasi, again, I really like her takes on the movie, and she wrote 3 articles about it. She talks about the visual storytelling that is used in the film. And what she means by that is that a lot of the images we are shown are not explained to us in the dialogue. And a lot of historical events just pass through the screen, and you know, you blink, you miss it, or if you don't know what's happening, well, it's not very important for the actual story, but there's a lot of information that is brought to you. And some scholars have argued, that Chiyoko is an aware representation of Japanese history. She's going through time, she is seemingly unaffected by what's going on, you know. I mean, she, of course, you know, Tokyo gets bombed and it affects her a lot, but she keeps running, she keeps moving, she keeps making movie. And so Napier argues that by creating a feminine identity for the Japanese past, the director privileges beauty, sacrifice, loyalty, and resilience, and highlights any of the more controversial aspects of Japanese history, especially its problematic role during the year up to and including World War II. And that's, for example, something that happened when we go to Manchuria. Manchuria was colonized by Japan. It became a puppet state, the Manchukuo. And a lot of the films that were made there were propaganda film. And Chiyoko is seemingly doing that. You know, she's a nurse in the war, and she's participating in a war effort, but that's not really commented upon. And Chiyoko herself says that she don't care much about history, so it just sort of happens. At the bottom of the screen here, for example, she mentioned that the war is over, and we can see that her clothes have changed. They're much more simple and plain, so we can assume that there's a restriction. But there are 2 characters in the background also, they look like GIs, and it's because Japan was occupied by the Allied occupation, which had a lot of American, but that's again something that doesn't seem to affect what Chiyoko's life is all about at the time. Making sure that we have time. I'm going to finish with some discussion of Kon's style, which I think is very interesting. And there are numerous scenes in the movie where the background is static and is Chiyoko running through it. I think I have an example here. It's the scene just after the image I show with the 2 GI. She goes and joins the picture, and the picture stays static in the background, but she's able to come in and out. And I think all of these techniques are very interesting because they show us how Kon is able to both use technique that is proper to cinema, live action cinema, but is also able to play and use all of the technique that are given to him through the toolkit of animation. And Thomas Lamar in 2009 coined this term animatism in his book, The Anime Machine, which is defined as the characteristics are the separation of the image into multiple planes, the result being a multiplanar image. And if you recall, when you're doing hand-drawn animation, you have a cell sheet, right? So your character, for example, is in the foreground. Here we have Chiyoko, for example, she will be in your front of your cell sheet, and then you will draw the background. And by moving between the layer, basically between all of these sheets, you create an image that you're then able to make move in a certain way. So in order to create movement, you can either go in depth, which is more of a cinematic movement. I have an example in a second. Or you can use this animating movement, which would be lateral between layers. So for example, this scene, which is the end of a very long chase that Chiyoko is involved with, which by the way, Conte is its favorite sequence from the film. We are going right into the image, right? There's a match cut, like we learned last week, of Chiyoko falling from the, I mean, she's not falling, she's rolling in the rickshaw, and then she's rolling into the background of the image on her bike. So that's very cinematic in the movement. But then in the same sequence, we can really see the different layers, the movement between the layers. When we look at some of the tests they did before, you can see that Chiyoko is in her carriage and she's static, she's not moving. I'll try to show that again, but it's a train moving in the background on another layer that creates the feeling of movement. And then when we look at the actual final image, she's moving up and down, you know, she's shaking, so she's jolting a little bit because of the carriage. But again, the movement is definitely created by the background image that moves, that slides between her. And I think if you were looking at Cohn's movie, you can really realize how clever, much of a genius he was. And I was able to use all of these different techniques in order to create a film that is not only very beautiful to look at, but it's also full of this little detail that when you start to pick on, you realize that the story goes in so many different layers. And I think I will end it up here because I'm thinking there's some question popping up. And I've also been talking for a while. So I will end my presentation here, and I welcome any comments and questions. And I thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you for that. That was really great. And I think you touched on a lot of different topics here. So I'm excited to have a discussion about all of this. I'm interested, so honestly, this wasn't one of my planned questions, but you brought up Khan's use of female characters and as sort of a vessel for his obsession. And I read the same quote that you said out loud. And I found it kind of like struck a nerve because I love these characters, and I think he does such a tremendous job expanding, the experience of a gender he can't know, but it was sort of like a weird, kind of a disappointing thing to hear him say, because I wouldn't expect him to be sort of driven by an obsession so much as like, because as he's also said, he spent a lot of his youth and his adolescence like with girls instead of boys because he felt they were more mature. So clearly he has an understanding of the depth, and that shows. But I'm just interested in kind of more of what you think about that, and if you did want to elaborate on your thoughts on that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Something else I read is that he really enjoyed girls manga, and that he would read Margaret, which published, very interesting girls comics. So I was also shocked by this comment, and I wonder if we can look into his other project, where he does have male characters show up, because I feel the quote also kind of says, well, male characters are all the same, like I understand all men in the world and I see all of their flows. So I think it's kind of hitting both gender right in the face and saying,
right,
sort of confusing thing in both cases. But I had the same feeling, about being a bit disappointed. But then, because I like a Millennium Actress a lot, and I like Khan's work a lot. But looking at it, it's more like Chiyoko is an image. She's an image of an idol. She's not a full-fledged female character in a way. And I think it's a choice in order to be able to say something about this, obsession that we all have about this figure in the public eye. And so I wonder if this comment, which to me is kind of sexist, was just him trying to explain as well his need and his will to portray his own obsession as well, because he has said that, you know, he is an otaku in a way, you know, he has his own obsession as well. And so by putting it in female character, it's easier to show. But I wonder if he changed his mind as he kept making more film, as he kept maybe talking with more women and sort of, you know, understanding them a little bit more, and maybe meeting men that have more layer to them as well, that he can create and make run his movie and fill with his obsession as well. Because Genya is also one of them, right? He's also an obsessed person. So,
well, and I think Millennium Actress does a wonderful job of showing sort of both sides of that, kind of like what you said, because you do have this unknown woman who's a public figure that nobody gets to know, including us, even though we're in her mind, literally. But we also see the other side of that with her chasing after this unknown man as well. And it seems to me like it's a statement on sort of the way we project our own sense of love and admiration on the things we don't know. And the idea of knowing sort of like diminishes that. Because at the very end, in the last scene, like, you know, her joy was in the chase and, you know, chasing after, if we knew him, if we knew like anything about this like symbol that's no more than a MacGuffin, then that would sort of ruin the illusion. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about that. So we do have some audience questions. So the first one's from Pamela Pei. Why do you think Khan draws the character's eyes so large?
I would answer by saying he's not the person who draws the eyes the largest. I think we touched on that last week a little bit about how very realistic a lot of his work is. I think there's a sort of convention in some of animation where, you know, having big eyes make you empathize more with the person. That's why we love, you know, baby seals and, you know, animal with big eyes, because they look very cute and we start feeling a lot of things when we look at them. I think the character design of Chiyoko is very beautiful. She's really somebody we enjoy watching. And she's also very expressive, right? She has all of the scene where she's crying, where she's running, and we keep looking at her eyes. So in a certain way, I think that her emotion and her expression are really much set in the eyes as well. So making them larger makes this possibility of expression larger. But I don't know if I have the best answer on that.
Well, I think also it's a very common, and I'm not an animation expert by any means, but it's common to draw large eyes. I mean, Disney does that with just about everything. Yes. So, but yeah, it's a good question. Joshua Ray asks, I read Millennium Actress as a sort of essay about apparatus theory, in that it literalizes a pithy, maybe reductive version of the theory as proposed by Godard. What is alive is not what's on screen, but what is between you and the screen. Ideas on that?
That's interesting. I think it definitely talks about our relation between us and what we see on screen. But then what do you make of the memories then of Chiyoko? Because that's what we are confronted with throughout the film. And this memory is sort of being invaded again by the movie and by Genya. So I wonder about that. But also what is said in the film about her relationship to a screen, because it's again a very obsessive relationship, which is much more positive than what was done, for example, in Perfect Blue, right? The relationship between the idol and the fan was much more negative. But I also don't want to give a pass to the attitude that Genya has. Some of the things that it does, I find extremely creepy. His relationship with the screen, this relationship with the actress, is obsessive again. So I'm not sure if I'm giving a good answer here. And I'd be interested to know what Joshua himself thinks about it. And if you could comment as well, I would be interested.
Mm-hmm. You kind of touched on it, but he had a caveat on that question. He said, I'm wondering if you compare the use of time and realities here and Perfect Blue.
So I haven't seen Perfect Blue in a long time, which I probably should have rewatched. But here we have a very, we know we're going through 1,000 years span, right? Because if we look at the movie, we're going from this medieval period to the SF period. We're going into the very long past to the very long future in certain way. And we have also a lot of things in Perfect Blue that make you doubt what's real and not real. They have this whole idea of, is it in her head? Is it in our head? Is it what's going on? Whereas here, this doesn't really matter. And I think last week we talked about, solving the movie, which in Perfect Blue, in a certain way, you can solve the movie. But Millennium Actress, I feel you don't need to solve it. And I don't think the film is asking us to solve it. So in a certain way, I feel that this notion of what's real, what's not real in Millennium Actress in a certain way doesn't matter as much as it does in Perfect Blue. There's a solution at the end of Perfect Blue. There is a murderer. There is somebody who's doing something. In Millennium Actress, we have a lot of scene where Chiyoko is saying, oh, if you come tomorrow, I won't remember any of that. Or there's a scene where the lady helps her bring her medicine and she doesn't take it. She's kind of self-medicating with her weird tea. So it seems that her memory is also affective. So is she somebody we can trust? Probably not. But we are enjoying the ride in a way. We don't need to solve anything. So I think that's really something that I see as being very different between the two movies, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I do think it shows a lot of Cohn's range in that he's able to use the same stylistic structure to make two very different points, because one is sort of the deconstructing of a sense of identity, and the other one is an exploration of like nostalgia and how that can sort of recreate or alter our memories. So yeah, thank you. We've got a question by Alexandra Rigby. I've seen plenty of takes about what the key unlocks, which is the most important thing. The artist's political dreams, Chiyoko's past, the audience can use understanding of Chiyoko. Do you have a particular reading you lean toward?
Ooh, I like that question. I've been throwing at it with my partner a lot, and we've been talking about the key. Again, does it matter? I remember the first time I watched the film, not knowing anything about it. I was a bit upset that we don't get to see the key open anything. But now that I've seen it multiple times and I've just been, focusing less on the key, I see it differently. I was reading an article and I cannot remember who wrote it, but the reading of it was that, first of all, the key gives access to Chiyoko's memory. The key literally unlocks her memory because she sees a key and she remembers the guy. It seems like she didn't remember him too much until then. She discards the key in a way and then she's living her life without it. But at the same time, the key gives access to Genya into her home because apparently she's not meeting anyone, but by saying he has something for her, presumably telling her about the key, he again unlocks access to her. And so the key is a little bit of a metaphor, is a way to see this unlocking of memory. And I really like this reading a lot because you could, look at something very concrete, because in the scene where they're talking about the key, the camera sort of shows you the box that he has, his box of a tool. So again, that could be, unlocking the possibility of his painting, possibility of the artist. But that seems, it's the same time concrete and not concrete, but it seems a little bit too concrete to me. So I really like this notion of unlocking the memories and also unlocking access. And at the very end, she's holding the key and she's, going into the rocket ship toward him again. She's unlocking this possibility of continuing her chase. So I like that idea.
I like that too, and that's sort of what I gathered personally, is that the key is in a literal sense unlocking these memories for her and triggering a lot of these things, but is never meant to be known. And in the beginning, when the artist is talking about it, and he says it unlocks the most important thing. Yes, we're seeing the box, but it does seem to me like it's sort of instigating this sense of like prophecy and like a sense of fate and inevitability and where the story is headed. So I don't know if you felt that at any other points, but I, like you were saying earlier on about the earthquake and the fact that it started within the movie and it like sort of came out. It just seems like there are hints along the way that are saying that this is sort of about an inevitability, about what kind of world we're in.
I like the notion of inevitability. I was thinking, the scene where the director is sort of hitting on her and the key hits the glass and that reminds her of him, of the painter, and then she does not marry him. And she's sort of stopped from marrying him until somebody steals the key. So there's this notion also that it's stopping her from moving forward as well, because she's stuck into this running forward. She's stuck into this chase that is made possible by the key, because when she does not have the key in that scene, but also when she has this break where we don't see anything that happened to her, but she's not chasing him, she's not making a movie anymore. So in a certain way, the key is linked to this inevitable chase that she does.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. I didn't think about that, but it is sort of like in the same way that it's sort of unlocking, it's also kind of locking her into this like cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Pete has a question. Watching the film, one gets the impression that Cohn put extra specific care into the creation of the posters, billboards, and magazine covers you see in the world of the film. Why do you suppose this was a priority for him?
Ooh, I think that connects well to our discussion of visual storytelling. And again, I want to emphasize this notion that the more you watch the film, the more you start picking up on seeing it, the more you start obsessing about it. For example, this time I was obsessing about the painting that the painter does in the house, the Sora's house. I kept thinking about that. Some of these movies poster actually, of course, inspired by real movie posters, but they also give you little hint about what's going on. For example, there's it's the scene that continues to move, on the left, where she starts with the GI in the background, goes and sits in the picture, and then she goes and she meets some man, a star, and sort of embraces him, and she's wearing this headscarf, and then you sort of move back and you see that all the people watching the film, watching the poster, all the women are also wearing the same stuff, same headscarf. And that's connected to something that really happened. There was an actress in Japan at the time who did the same, wore something similar in the film, and it became a big hit. So here you have this information that goes through the movie poster that there's no dialogue telling you what's happening. There's nothing that's really telling you, oh, we're showing you that because she's a great actress and she is influencing the fashion of the time. But it's in the poster. And at the same time, when Chiyoko is speaking, she has all of these posters spread out on the table, right? And as I was thinking about it, I kept wondering, well, why are they there? Why are we looking at them? And in a certain way, because the film are invading her memory, I feel that maybe as she is watching the poster themselves and remembering all the things that she does, these idea, this scene, these examples start to seep in her memory. And then when we come back into the diegetic world of the film, we are shown this poster to be like, oh, this is the movie that she did. So in one hand, you have the haha moment where you're like, oh, that's a Godzilla reference. Oh, that's the Throne of Blood reference. But at the same time, it's telling you a little more hint about things like, oh, she was in a film about ninjas. Then we see a ninja scene or something. And also it's kind of obsessive in a way. So all of this little detail that it includes there for us to kind of find and see. So I like this inclusion a lot. I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to what you were saying about how Khan himself is the fan or the otaku, as you're saying. So, yeah. So actually, so we have another question, but I do want to mention really quick the earthquakes. And I'm just wondering if you had anything to say about the use of those and the fact that Chiyoko was born during an earthquake and she died, you know, during or after an earthquake, and sort of what that is representing.
Yeah, that's a very good question. There are different interpretations of the earthquake. This idea of, you know, complete destruction and renewal. Again, this cycle, things are happening. It seems to always happen to her. She says, you know, big earthquake mark important part of my life. As you mentioned, she's born during an earthquake. The earthquake happened while she's filming the scene, and you know, it's really a very important moment of her life because she stopped working as an actress at the time. But somebody, and I'm sorry, I don't remember who she was, but there was a scholar who wrote about the anime interval that are meant by the earthquake. And by that, she means we're jumping from one it's almost as if the whole movie is all as this sliding next to each other. So we're jumping from the foreground into the background and vice versa, and we're moving around all of these different places, and the earthquake is sort of giving a rhythm to all of this jumping from one to the other. So as we were looking at the first scene, we have the earthquake, and that allows for the movie to come into Kenya's world. The earthquake sort of remediate the space. We are going from one film and one reality separated, earthquake happened, everything is shamble. The two reality are sort of coupled together, and now you can go from one to the other.
I love that. That's interesting. Okay, so Charles Jacobson says, the arrows pinning the cameraman to the wall is from Throne of Blood. Any other references from Throne of Blood? You kind of touched on that already.
The spirit again is a very direct reference to Throne of Blood. Because I watched Throne of Blood recently, and then I rewatched Millennium Actress. I thought that the costume she's wearing, the white kimono, looks very similar to the standing for Lady Macbeth in Throne of Blood. She looks quite similar. But that's all I would have. So definitely the arrow. Maybe, you know, all this, the soldier running around also reminded me of the film, and definitely the woman with the wheel.
Okay, Charles Jacobson also has a question about compare the function of the key in Millennium Actress with the key in Mulholland Drive, which also concerns memory.
Ooh, okay, so I have seen Mulholland Drive, but it was way back in the day, and I really do not remember what the key hold. But if I recall correctly, isn't it also something that we don't really get a definitive answer for? Jessica, maybe you have something here.
I'm forgetting too. I haven't seen it. If someone wants to comment, I mean, I've seen it, but I haven't seen it in a while. If someone wants to comment on that.
Charles, help us if you have anything here. We'll be happy to have. Sorry, I'm just blanking on this one.
Well, maybe we can come back to that. Jordan Stanley asks, you said you were obsessing about the artist painting at this time. What were your thoughts about it?
Okay, so hold on here, because I went down a big rabbit hole of just, but what if? So something that I don't see mentioned a lot, and that I was starting to think about, is that, is the painter really a person? Is he real, or is he made up by the movie? Because I want to go back to the scene where you know, Chiyoko is at the train station, and then Genya say, "Oh, I cry all the time here." So this is a movie. So has she really met a painter in her life, or is it just a remediation of a memory that makes it that every single movies that she made sort of was about her chasing after a man, which could be the case because a lot of movies are about that. So I was obsessing about the painting because I was thinking, well, if it's not a real person, why does she have the painting? And then I was thinking, well, maybe the painting was a prop. Maybe it was a prop from the movie, and that's why she has it. But then it's sort of, I really had this question about, is the painter actually a real person, or is he an idea of a person, or is he a character from one other film? And I feel that's kind of hinged on both the painting, but also other characters that keep coming up. For example, the guy with the scar, he keeps coming up, but he recognizes her. So is he like a real policeman in reality? As we see, he shows up at the end, but you know, what does it represent? Is he a real person again? Did all of this happen? And Eiko as well, our co-star, who also shows up under different makeup, under different guise. Is she, you know, is she someone who was really in reality and also in your life? But then I wonder if the painter is the same. So that was what I was really obsessing about.
Yeah. So Joshua Ray responded back to the key thing. He said, I think everything you said about the key in Millennium Actress works completely for the key in Mulholland Drive. Unlocks, locks memories, dreams, films as dreams and memory. Has no real diegetic purpose. And they came out so close to each other and about actresses. So yeah.
Thank you, Joshua, because you were in a problem there.
Well, I should have called a last call for questions a while ago, but if anyone has any quick last minute questions before we close out, we are technically overtime now. But I do want to say thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. Like I said, you touched on so many different aspects of the film, which I really appreciate. So yeah, if that's it, then I want to say thank you to everyone for coming out. And come back next week, 7 p.m. for Ethan Hawker. He'll be talking about Tokyo Godfathers.
Thank you so much.
Bye.